Welcome Tanya Torp to the stage.
It is so good to be with family. This is awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm really, really glad that we are in a Black-owned space. There are not a lot of Black-owned spaces. So yes, I was intentional about that. Thank you so much, TD. I want to share this concept I've been writing and reading a lot about for the last couple of years called radical hospitality. And one of the books that I'm reading takes this 1,500-year-old writing of a monk and assigns some modern implications to the way of welcome that he practiced. The book is entitled Radical Hospitality, Benedict's Way of Love, and the author shares this. Hope you can see it. There we go. People have been hurt by strangers. You only need to turn the evening news on to be aware that we are growing into a fearful people, suspicious of strangers and outsiders. When we speak of the depth of hospitality, we are proposing something scary and radical, but it's worth the risk. Unless we find a way to open ourselves to others, we will grow even more isolated and frightened. If we do not find and practice ways of hospitality, we will grow increasingly hostile. The people we encounter daily at the gas station, the grocery store, and the flower shop aren't incidental to our lives. Benedict teaches us that if we close ourselves to the stranger, we close ourselves to the sacred. Whew, right? I'm interested in this concept because I believe we are lost. We're lost. Not in some lofty existential way or some ecumenical way, really, but also not in some folksy pedestrian way. I don't believe that there has been a time in our history in this country where it's been great for everyone. I facilitate a workshop on the history of racism in America, and I can tell you if you just spend about 2 minutes in 1492, you will know that this place was built on a lot of hatred and othering of people. But in my lifetime, I've noted a shift away from the mere thought of engagement in collective humanity, making way for apathy, complacency, and even anger, hatred, and greed. And I'm kind of sick of it. What about y'all? So I personally define radical hospitality as transformational connection through welcome. Transformational connection through welcome. So if I welcome you, you can choose to reject me, you can choose to accept it, you can choose to reciprocate, but I don't get to control you. My act of welcome isn't contingent on your behavior. What I'm talking about is a deeper connection that brings about a change. Sometimes that change is in yourself, and really that's where it needs to start. So I want to start off by admitting that the first time that I practiced radical hospitality, I messed it up big time, y'all. I mean, big time. So my faith tradition is Christianity, and though I am blessed with friends from every single walk of life who do not share my faith tradition, that is the lens through which I see most things in my life. And as an Air Force brat not from Kentucky, after I arrived in Lexington, I heard and read a lot of things about the East End. That's the place that we're sitting here right now, this part of the city that I love with all of my heart. I heard a lot of things about this neighborhood. I heard about drugs and violence. And I heard about areas in this neighborhood that I shouldn't walk alone at night. What I didn't hear was about the incredible people that I would later meet. So what I did, here's a picture of me parachuting in. So that's how I messed up. I parachuted into this neighborhood as a new neighbor on Ohio Street, just right across the street, actually. And I was armed with assumptions. I was armed with my faith and a plucky can-do attitude that I was going to roll up my sleeves and help make a change in this neighborhood. It was a gift when I shared this vision with a new neighbor, and she told me that I was an arrogant idiot and that I needed to sit down and listen. And she was so right. She took me under her wing and over several cups of coffee, sometimes tea, sometimes a piece of peach cobbler, sometimes even ribs off the hot grill. That's real, y'all. That's some real hospitality right there. She soon taught myself and my husband not to believe everything that we heard, because not everything about this neighborhood is printed. She taught us what communication and connection really look like around here. And I learned about the assets that I would never see with the naked eye, like the grandmother on Chestnut Street who watches kids for free so that moms can work at night. Or those retired Black teachers who gave their all to this neighborhood before the school shut down, that attend the neighborhood association, and they have every single piece of history memorized about this community. I didn't learn about that from other people. And after a few months, this woman did something remarkable. She took Christian and I, my husband, and walked us around to other neighbors who then invited us on their porches too. And these porches became pews for me, where I learned about relationship and Christianity. And what I realized was the Christianity that I was practicing was less about relationship and more about perpetuating colonialism. Ooh, ouch. That was a lesson. We were outsiders, and they were used to outsiders with big ideas in this neighborhood. There were churches who adopted blocks and then quickly abandoned them. Universities that were studying them, right? And extracting stories like coal from mountains, taking what they needed and not sticking around long enough to read the next chapter. There were block grants that spoke about beautification, but never living wage jobs that my neighbors have been asking for years in this neighborhood. They were leaving out single parents because of mass incarceration, something that we didn't really talk about. Sometimes at the end of the month, there was more month than money, and that was not anything people were willing to talk about. Transformational connection through welcome is what this woman showed me. My theology changed from an us and a them to a we theology. Connecting with my neighbors had changed my paradigm from sitting on that porch, and I had little or nothing to teach them, and they had everything to teach me. The wedding. So Sean Gladding is in the audience, and Sean performed part of the ceremony for me to marry my husband. So thank you, because I'm married because you. So we decided that we wanted to get married and sort of take this newfound hospitality that we were learning from our neighbors and incorporate it in our lives in some new ways. So we said what we would do is just invite the entire neighborhood. What better way to get to know people and love on people and let them love on us and get to know them by inviting everyone. So we literally walked door to door throughout the entire East End and invited everyone to our wedding. Are y'all crazy? You're inviting the whole neighborhood? What are y'all really selling? No thanks. And my favorite, can I bring my cousin too? So we decided to have a big old carnival, and we wanted to invite some of our favorite nonprofits because they didn't have brick and mortar in the neighborhood. And so they expected people to find them somehow in the community. And so we wanted to invite them to come to the wedding. And so we registered voters, tested for HIV with AVOL, did all kinds of amazing things. And it was a carnival atmosphere. Y'all, I got to play skee ball in my wedding gown. That was real. And depending on who you ask, people say that there were 400 people there, and other people say 1,000. All I know is it was the best party I have ever attended. It was awesome. And many neighbors who attended are my friends today. 9 years later, Christian and I will be holding hands walking down the street, and a neighbor will yell out, "Y'all still married? All right." I was at your wedding. Transformation through connection and welcome. We were transformed. No longer were we parachuting in and trying to solve problems that we knew nothing about. We were staying in our lane and just trying to build relationships and be good neighbors. We were the ones changed through those porch sittings. Henry. This is Henry. One day I was working in a bookstore in Lexington, and I had been studying Uganda for a while. I'm like in love and obsessed with Uganda before I even went there. And I hear this person in the bookstore that I'm working at start talking about Uganda right here in Lexington. So, of course, I ran over, and I totally forgot about what I was supposed to be doing for my job. And I spent an hour and a half talking to Henry. Nobody ever called me back to the register. It was fine. So before he left, I gave him the biggest hug ever, and he gave me his information, and he said, if you're ever in Uganda, come on by. And I thought, oh, okay, whatever. Well, about a year later, some friends and I did go to Uganda to work with young women who'd been trafficked. And I sent Henry an email and let him know what my flight information was. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to be there. I'd love to catch up with you. And I never heard back from Henry. So I was like, oh, well, that was a misconnection. It's fine. Well, my friends and I got off this 36-hour plane ride, and we were so exhausted, and it felt like there were 5,000 people in the line, like waiting to get through customs. And then we heard on the loudspeaker that all the taxis were gone for the night, and we would have to spend the rest of the time in the airport. And so I was a little put off, but I was like, other people are all put off, so people are living like totally different than I am. And so I said, all right, I'm going to embrace this. When suddenly I hear, Tanya, over here. Henry had showed up. Not only had he showed up, he brought several friends with him, a huge vehicle to fit all of my friends, and he wanted to make sure that we were able to navigate his country and that we felt welcomed. He drove us 2 hours to our hotel. The joy of my life was being able to take my husband back to Uganda to meet Henry for our honeymoon and to do work in his orphanage, and it was just amazing. Henry welcomed us into his country and went out of his way to show us love and grace at every single turn. And so we adopted that into our hearts and tried to bring a little bit of Uganda back with us. And so we said, when we move into a neighborhood or when we're in with our neighbors, we need to lean in as much as possible. We don't want to just talk about the weather over the fence. We need to lean in. And so we thought, okay, we'll invite them for a meal. That's how we're going to start leaning in. And so because of Henry, transformational connection through welcome happened again. Well, then we got an opportunity to move into a house. Our friends, John and Catherine Heinz, some of you know them, were moving, and they decided to sell us their home. And that was a big deal because people were really wanting that house, and they said they wanted intentionally someone Black to move into the house because of the gentrification that had started in our neighborhood. And so as we thought about how we're going to use our house, we said, you know what? We want it to be open to the community. If we're going to do radical hospitality, let's just do it all the way. So we started allowing nonprofits to have board meetings in our home. We started having events like mobile HIV testing. We did alternative spring break for people who were coming to work with local nonprofits in our neighborhood. And so we had like 15 students living in our house. The house was always bustling, and we loved every last bit of it. I want to tell you a story, though, about how the bustling sometimes gets to be a little much. And so I'm going to read a little bit about this, but I want to tell you about it first. So this is from my writing. What's happening in this part of this little excerpt is that it's 3 a.m. Somebody's been banging on the glass door so hard that we're afraid it's going to break. And they're rattling our doorknob, and like somebody is just trying to get into our house. And so my husband tells me, you stay here, stay safe. I'm going to go check it out. And after a minute, I was like, who's he kidding? I ain't staying here. Come on down the stairs. And as I'm coming down the stairs, this is what I hear. This is from the forthcoming book. Grace, it's after 3 a.m. Do you know what time it is? I heard my husband bellow. I hear a mixture of relief and patience nearing its end in his voice. For the purposes of this moment, her name is Grace. And this is not her last visit or her first visit, though she has never come at this hour. When we met her a few months ago, the first thing I noticed was how slowly she moved and how she didn't look us in the eye when she spoke. I just want a little bit of food. I'm ever so hungry. She'd said that first day when we'd made her acquaintance. She spoke as if she was some damsel in a Disney princess movie, repeating a haughty and regal dialect mixed with her own Appalachian born and bred one. We always invite her into our home for what we hope will be a quick meal. Her visiting schedule has no rhyme or reason and is always at the most inconvenient times. But there's just something about her that makes us forget our own busy agendas and lean towards love. Her short, Joni loves Chachi hair would be cute on her oval face if it weren't shellacked to her forehead with sweat and God knows what else. She shuffles her 90-pound frame across the threshold, and I instinctively hold my breath. She smells like she slept in her own urine again, and crack pipe burns are scarlet and onyx on her fingers. We're always surprised that there is a whisper of dignity in her demands. When presented with a sandwich, she asks, "Don't you have any chips to go with this?" When presented with a cup of water, she insists on Pepsi. Somehow she knows she deserves these niceties. Flashback. Once a few months ago, we sat down with her and asked her questions about her life over sandwich and chips and Pepsi. We learned that she used to be a cook in a diner many years ago, and she tells us stories about the times that her husband regularly beat her. I didn't like him very much, she states matter-of-factly. When he died unexpectedly in a work accident, her tears stopped falling long before the bruises healed. She numbed herself by drinking so excessively that her mother had to take custody of her son and raise him. The story of an ever-increasing number of grandparents in our city. At 52, she sells drugs for the dealers in the neighborhood, turns tricks for food. She speaks incoherently and detached about herself, as if she's watching someone else's life on a made-for-TV movie, explaining the plot without having seen the beginning, middle, or the end. Every once in a while, she's lucid, and her thoughts make sense. We're on the porch, and I'm slowly teaching her how to play Rummy Cube one fall afternoon. The pain drove me crazy, she says, looking right through me and answering the question about the state of her mental health that I never asked aloud. They make fun of me for what I do. I wish I could get away. A few days later, during another sporadic visit, we talk about the flowers my husband has just planted, and she's able to identify the goldenrod, the black-eyed Susan, and the cone flowers, all indigenous to Kentucky. But when she looks over at the fig tree that Sean Gladding gave us, she notices that it's a delicacy. Over a plate of plump red tomatoes, the last of the season from our garden, I pass her the salt and begin to talk about the figs, when suddenly she grabs my hand, causing the salt to tip over, a white avalanche exploding onto her plate. She stares at me intently, her grip tightening, and she blurts out, "I just want to make you proud of me." The admission stuns me and sends tears stinging my eyes, forcing me to look away so that she doesn't see me cry. I leave my hand in hers, though I'm tempted to pull away and retreat. These episodes are frequent as she visits. She often disappears into a memory and forgets who we are. I concentrate on the roughness of her touch. Her hands are so dry, so cold, and I can tell that she's no longer seeing my brown skin. Her mind has fashioned me into someone else. I search my brain for something, anything to say. One moment, we've been talking about something mundane, sharing a snack, and in the next, her heart was beating in my hand. I knew it was an echo of a thought she wanted to share with her own mother, long before she believed it was too late for her life, long before she gave up, long before this hell of hunger, sick, poverty, and crime. Back to tonight. We're standing there after she's tried to get in the house. We set a boundary with Grace. 3:30 in the morning is too early. She can come when the blinds are open in the front picture window, but never before. Do you understand, Grace? I ask her gently. Are you sure you don't have any food right now? I really need it. Grace, come back in a few hours and I promise I'll make you a breakfast fit for a queen. She leaves angry and agitated and does not return when the blinds open. But she will. She always does. And we will keep her Pepsi stashed in the pantry for her random visits, just like always. Thank you. I'm going to share one more story about Heinz Breakfast. Many of y'all are from Heinz Breakfast. Can I get some claps if you've been to Heinz Breakfast? Yeah? So Heinz Breakfast is named after John and Catherine Heinz. They started the tradition themselves. They'd have people come over for breakfast on Saturdays. Really simple, pancakes, coffee, good conversations. And when they moved, they put it on social media that they were moving. And somebody said, well, what about breakfast? And I said, all right, well, I guess I'm going to continue this tradition. So Heinz Breakfast was born. The first time breakfast we had, 125 people showed up. Had a lot of help in the kitchen. I knew we were going to be okay when Dudley, the only bridge between the two of us, showed up. Dudley's a storyteller and an actor, and the Heinz family had introduced us to him. So you're going to picture this moment that I'm about to tell you about. Okay? There's various neighbors of every background, every race, religion, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, everything. And then my husband notices that somebody's just run through our backyard and crawled underneath our chicken coop. You know where there's poop. And he yells at this person to come inside the house, and this person complies and comes in and walks into a room full of strangers. And I also want to mention that this incident takes place right as this huge rash in the media of police murders involving unarmed people of color, mostly black people. This was not new, it just was in the media now. And Black Lives Matter had just formed, so this is the moment that we're in when this happens. He appeared to be about 14 years old, and as he looked around slowly in the room, It was as if he were waking up from a dream in a different place than he had fallen asleep. Confusion and unmistakable fear stretched from his eyes down to his chin. His chin heaved with an unmistakable tenor of someone who'd run a very long way. "Sit down," my husband ordered. The young man moved like he was chained to someone else. His squeaky black sneakers thudded on our 113-year-old floors. The only sound was the Aretha Franklin playlist in the background. As he lowered himself into a chair and placed his hands on the table, I noticed what had concerned me when I saw him. This child was shaking. Instantly, all eyes flew to me. I was behind the counter in my normal place, flipping pancakes, sipping coffee, and opening the waffle iron after it beeped, eyeballing the waffle and saying that needs more time, and continuing on with the conversation. I knew I had to take command of this situation just like I had of my kitchen. Felice, my amazing neighbor, Felice Salmon, she and I locked eyes, and I knew what she was thinking. "I'll whip you up a Belgian waffle, young man," I said, keeping my voice as light as I could. "It must seem strange to you, all of these faces, but we meet here weekly in this space to have breakfast and just connect." Felice had poured him a cup of water, handed it to him, and said, "Drink this." He did so immediately, and his breathing began to slow down. I noticed that she had placed her hand on his back and was patting it. This would seem like a condescending gesture from anyone else, but her natural state was that of comforting perceiver in our community. She knew exactly what others needed, and she fearlessly gave of herself. The waffle was ready within 4 minutes, and I carried it over, butter, syrup, fork, and knife. Felice took it and asked, "Do you like butter and syrup?" He nodded. His hands were still shaking, so she prepared the waffle for him, asking him if the syrup was enough. Subtly, she asked him, "What's your name?" and he didn't answer. The question we'd all had swirling in our heads began to be realized. Has he escaped from abuse? Does he live somewhere he doesn't get enough to eat? Is he suffering from a psychotic episode? What is he escaping from? Who should we call? What kind of trouble is he in? At this point, we began to realize that he was running from the police. So I'm taking a brief pause to come back to now to tell you this is what was going on. He was running from the police. Somebody had left their keys in their car in our neighborhood and left their door unlocked. So of course, he and his friends were just taking this car for a joyride. And we began to see police officers. We can have big picture windows, and we began to see them through the big picture windows, poking in our bushes and looking around. And not everyone noticed it, so I just tried to keep myself like business as usual, avoiding panic, and I didn't want a shootout in my house. As I served him another waffle, I noticed something that blew my mind. My staunch, law-abiding, and incredibly conservative friend had positioned himself in front of the window. And my flaming anarchist, down with the establishment friend had done the same. They were both trying to hide him, polar opposites, one mind. So eventually the police did come inside, and it took a little while, but at this point, the 19-year-old he stood up and he started like screaming and we found out he was 19, making expletives at the police officers, and we realized this was not the first bit of trouble that he'd been in. He'd been in a lot of trouble. So I'm back to the story. In an inconceivably easy tone, with about 30 pairs of eyes watching, my husband took out his business card and handed it to Trey in front of all of these officers. "Do you want me to be your lawyer?" "Huh? Do you want me to be your lawyer, kid? You have to say yes if you want me to be your lawyer." "Yes, okay. I'm your lawyer then. They're gonna book you, and I'll come to jail and see you later." Trey is stunned, but says okay. The officers handcuff him and lead him out, and the incident ends without fanfare. After the arrest that day, people stayed longer. More hands were in the kitchen helping wash dishes. There was a lot of conversation about why we had reacted in the ways that we did. It became a funny story that people told about the time that the kid was running from the police and ended up under a chicken coop in the house of his lawyer and his community. Here's Dudley to say, "Could this guy have picked a more perfect house to hide out in from the cops? He's getting a lawyer, some lady who's gonna pray over him, and a damn good story." I guess Heinz breakfast was where he needed to be after all. Transformational connection through welcome. I get the opportunity, actually privilege, to work for an organization called Step by Step that was mentioned earlier. In Step by Step, we work with young single moms. Our youngest has been the age of 12. Our oldest is 24. And these moms are incredible. And what I want to tell you about youth, about young people who need us, is when they invite you into their lives, that is hospitality just exponential. And so these young women, every single day, allow us to be in their lives, to love on them or to love them from afar. But I've heard incredible stories and seen incredible things. They go to college, they take care of their kids, they work on their GED, they feel loved, but it is really hospitable when they let me into their lives. Some of you are wondering, like, how can I lead that kind of life where I feel hospitable? How can I get into that? And it doesn't necessarily take the way that we do it. You can do it in your own way. And so this transformational connection through welcome happens in so many different ways. I see it in these little moms, these young moms that let me hold their children, that let me walk alongside of them, that I empower but don't control because it's their life, not mine. I get to see that. And you can do that. Walk alongside young people. They really need us. I'm gonna skip a couple of slides because I wanna share this last thing because I know my time is running out. This is a photo of our family, if you can see it. This is adoption day for our son Atticus. The judge said that she'd never seen so many people in one room and they actually had to open another courtroom just to allow us to come in. But I want to share with you that my son's French godfather, Lionel, got to know us sitting around that table at Heinz breakfast. His other godfather, Debron, used our home a few times for meetings for revolutionary justice work that he and Russell spearheaded that literally changed the face of this city. Atticus's Honduran fashion designer and humanitarian godmother, Sareda, brought us our first smells of Honduras that my child ever got to smell when she brought us a meal when we were tired and had this new little baby in our house. Radical hospitality opened my heart and gave me a family, y'all. This is my family. People that I'm not related to by blood, but they're my family. To be a foster parent is to actually hold a lot of love in your heart, but to hold it incredibly loosely. You have no idea what you're in for, and I can tell you that the people that sat around my table, the people that I've offered hospitality to and who have offered hospitality to me again and again and again, have saved me when I'm tired, when I'm a hot mess mom who can't hold it all together. They have been there time and time again. So the last thought that I'm gonna share is this picture of Anna, who's in the back. I walked in one day to this scene, exhausted after work. Anna, his godmother, and one of the most kind souls I have ever met, some of y'all know Anna and her kind soulness, was sitting on the floor with both of our children, and she was whispering in each of their ears over and over again, "I love you and you're special. I love you and you're special." They would squeal and tell her, "Say it again, say it again, say it again," and she would say, "I love you and you're special." Later when she left, I caught both kids saying to one another, "I love you and you're special." If I hadn't opened up my house to hospitality, if I hadn't opened up my life to hospitality, that would never have happened. I hope and pray that my inner compass yields to radical hospitality always, even if I get it wrong, because I've seen the richness in my life I wouldn't find anywhere else, and I hope the same for you and for our community too. Transformational connection through welcome. Thank you. Thank y'all. Okay. Can you go? I can take questions? All right. Thank y'all so much. I love this community. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, okay, that's enough. All right. No, okay. So I want to entertain some questions. They said I have a few minutes. They told me that I could take 20 minutes, and I realized that this house took 30, so I took 30, okay? So I would love to entertain any questions that you have. So I want to just recognize a couple of people. I'm going to take your time then if you're not going to have any questions. My husband, Christian, wave your hand. He's right there. I couldn't do it without him. He's nuts. If you see his social media, he's actually really a teddy bear. His social media is nuts. Don't friend him. It's quite entertaining. If you are an auntie or part of my family who is part of that picture, somebody who's loved on my kids, would you stand up, please? There's a lot of y'all in here. Stand up, y'all. Come on. These are my family, y'all. This is my community right here. These people taught me radical hospitality. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna take one last time. Okay, go ahead.
Actually, it's about your organization step by step.
I'd love to entertain that as an executive director. Tell me more. sbslex.org. We love money. Okay, go ahead. We always need volunteers. We have a mentor program for our young moms, which is incredible. They spend an hour a week with these young women, and it's just the best. We also love on them in a lot of different ways. We have a weekly program where we pick them up all over this town. We have some buses that go and pick them and their children up and provide a hot meal and some programming. And while we're doing all of that, their kids are having this blast of a time. They actually cry when they leave, which is kind of bad, but good, in our Revive Kids ministry. And so we do a lot of amazing things with these moms. Not only that, we have this year, for the first time ever, some young moms who've been through our program and are now leaders. So we have a leadership development program, and everything has changed about our agency because these young women are leading. We are following them. It is not radical hospitality to come in and tell other people what they need to do. It's radical when you let them lead and you get out of the way. And so these young women are wowing our socks off. So step by step, y'all. Good Giving Challenge is coming up while I have the mic. Step by step, sbslex.org. Give till it hurts. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I do have a follow-up.
Yes.
What time is breakfast?
The next breakfast is Thanksgiving Day, and you all are welcome to come. I'm inviting the whole room. Thanksgiving Day, because people don't like to cook breakfast because they're cooking other things. So breakfast starts at 9. Okay. I saw a question over here. Yes.
Can you say a little bit more about the book that you're reading excerpts from?
Yes, thank you. So I've been writing this book, painstakingly writing this book, about the radical hospitality that we have encountered at our home. And our home was named by a friend. We're not this pretentious, trust me, but it's called Justice House. We have our own Facebook page. And so I'm writing a lot about that, and there's some folks in here who've been my readers and loved on me through it. It's a really hard process because when I started this book, our neighborhood looked a lot different than it does now. It is mostly a neighborhood where there's not been a lot of investment in the neighborhood for many, many years. And now all of a sudden it's the up and happening place to be. And so there's a house about four doors down from us that was flipped. It was purchased for $107,000 and flipped and sold for almost $500,000. And so my neighbors are being displaced. And so the new challenge for me in writing this book is like before radical hospitality looked like this, but now I've got neighbors who are calling the police on my friends. My husband parked his car on the street, and a neighbor who I had just invited to breakfast the day before and knew my name called the police to get the car ticketed. And so now I'm trying to figure out radical hospitality for those who have invaded and Columbus my neighborhood. And that's been a real challenge for me, and it has I'm doing a lot of thinking, because if I'm gonna do radical hospitality, I've gotta welcome them too. And I'm really trying to figure out how to do that. So that's one of the reasons the book isn't out yet. Trying to figure out how to love them. They hard to love, but I'm gonna love them. How much time? Am I good? Oh my gosh, y'all, I have 2 minutes. Any other questions? TD the Great, you're amazing. Thank you for this space. And thank you for everything you do in this community. People don't know all the things you do. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate what you do, what you have done for the community. And also, my mother ran an emergency shelter for 27 years. Her name was Rebecca Young. She kept a lot of kids, and all the kids came back and called her moms. So they called, us, the sisters and brothers, they called me brother, the big brother. So all the kids that she kept, it was amazing. From all over the world, she welcomed everybody in the house. So I understand the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you. I saw another hand. Beth Bell in the back. How you doing?
Good. How are you? I want you to share with them a little bit about burnout and what you all and your staff.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because radical hospitality takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, it does take a lot out of you. So since we've gotten foster kids in our home, we're not able to open it up as much as we can since this is being recorded. DCBS, we're not opening it up as much as we could have before. What we do for self-care is our office. I've created the environment that I've always wanted to work in my office. And so my staff, I don't call them my staff, they're actually my co-laborers. We take off on Fridays. Every Friday we take off because we work so many hours with these young women. I also learned a lot, plug for Coach Colleen Eldridge. Colleen taught me about radical self-care as well. And so being able to be in those spaces where when I take off, my phone is off and I'm just relaxing, which I never could do before she coached me through that, is really important. We also, we work every Thursday night, and so I force my co-laborers to take a day off once a month on those Thursday nights, which is really difficult for them. But we just really practice the art of, I do a lot of prayer, and spend a lot of time in prayer to be able to do this. And then oftentimes those people that you saw up there, these people that stood up, will take our kids and let us have a date night. Hey, Lucky in Kentucky. And so that happens every once in a while too. So just trying to be intentional in that, it is really probably the hardest thing for me, but I have to continue to do it so that I don't experience that burnout, because it does take a lot out of you. Thanks for that question. Okay, I think my 2 minutes is up. Thank you all so much. I love Lexington.